All right. Thanks a lot, Nathan. Let's give these guys a round of applause. They've done a great job setting this up. Okay, so first of all, I'm thrilled to be here with you guys. Can everybody in the back hear me? You wave at me? Good. Okay, this mic's going to start drifting this way, so when you can't hear me, wave your hand. That was good. That's good. All right. So thanks again for having me. I'm really thrilled to be here. So what I want to do is just take some time today and sort of share a bit of my adventures around the world, what we've been up to through Hackers for Charity, and just sort of give you a sense of what I've discovered, and specifically what I've learned about hackers and what I've learned about this community. So first of all, for those of you that don't know me, let me give you just a little bit of background. I've been involved in technology since I was about 7 years old. My dad brought home, a computer from work, and I proceeded to take it apart, like right away. And I just fell in love with technology, and I was an only child and didn't have a whole lot of friends, so I was your typical, computer nerd from an early age. Just found this connection with technology. And one of the things that I was really drawn to was this idea of figuring out puzzles. That to me, that's what technology was. It was just something incredibly complex that not many people knew a whole lot about. And again, this is the 70s and 80s we're talking about, so it was sort of different than today, where everybody's got a device in their pocket and that kind of thing. But I was drawn to this idea of just figuring out very complex puzzles, and that's what drew me into security and specifically into hacking. And I saw that as, the hardest thing that you could do with technology really was, for me, it was breaking security. I didn't give too much thought to how to secure things, and admittedly to this day I still don't. Sorry for those of you that are on defense, but that's a harder job. I do the easier stuff and just break security systems. But around the year 2000, I was working for a big company. I was working for Computer Sciences Corporation, and I started a pen testing team that's still running today called Strikeforce. And this was one of the first teams that was out there, corporate teams that was out there doing professional hacking. So we would, not only break into networks doing remotes, we would do, internal assessments, we would do physical assessments, breaking into buildings, social engineering, lock picking, all that stuff. And this was around the year 2000, so 17 years ago. And around that time, I started this, figuring out a bit of a methodology that we'd go through with every client. And one of the first things that we'd do with any client when we were doing a remote was we'd start doing Google searches to find out about their internet presence. And around then, I sort of figured out that you could get an awful lot from Google. And so I started this thing called the Google Hacking Database. How many of you have heard of this thing? And started this idea of Google hacking, which was this silly concept that you could pretty much break into sites, get sensitive information from a site without doing anything except Google searching. We'd go through all this effort to break through firewalls and do remote exploits and all that stuff to get, say, access to a database. Well, with a Google search, I found that we could do similar stuff. And for whatever reason, maybe it was the timing of this, but this Google hacking thing really blew up and got a lot of attention, got a lot of publicity. And by 2004, I had pretty much reached the pinnacle of my career. I had some notoriety, and I was speaking at DEF CON, which to me was sort of the top of the hill. Once you spoke at DEF CON, that meant you were a real hacker, I guess. You were justified. And so I thought a lot about that as being very important to me, and was excited about that possibility for all the wrong reasons. I thought it would make me happy. I thought it would justify all the effort that I put in and all the time that I spent alone in my room, without friends, and I gave a talk about Google hacking, and frankly, it was awful. I ran into a guy this morning that said he saw that talk, and I apologize to you because it was an awful talk, and frankly, it was all about me and becoming, something bigger, I guess. But an interesting thing happened that year because of that talk, where I was sort of at the top of what I thought was the mountain, You know, I had a great job. I had a great family. I had, a great salary. I could buy just about whatever I wanted. I spoke at DEF CON, but I was kind of miserable and sort of had this like emptiness inside. And the way it manifested itself in my life was I sort of fell back on my upbringing, which was my Christian roots. And I decided I was going to commit suicide in the industry and post on my website that I was a Christian. It was like, that seemed pretty suicidal, but it was genuine on my part because I felt this emptiness and I was searching for something bigger than myself. And literally posted that on my website and said this little prayer like, okay, God, if you want to do something with my life, do it because this sucks. And you could argue this point indefinitely about what happened next or why, but the fact was that stepping away from myself, that process of backing off from myself sort of blew up. And a publisher approached me and said, would you like to write a book on this Google hacking thing? And that was interesting to me because I thought you wrote a book and then you went to get a publisher, but for me it was the other way around. And so what happened was Google hacking for penetration testers was released. It became this huge seller. The Google hacking thing blew up. I worked on a dozen more book projects. My career exploded for the next 3 years, and I found another mountaintop. And I got to another mountaintop where I went, man, my career's even better than before, and I've accomplished so much. And right around that time, my wife went on a missions trip to Uganda. And this was in 2006. And I remember this because I was in Caesar's Palace in a suite because I was a speaker. I had a marble bathroom with like 3 shower heads and 2 LED screens in this really nice room. And my wife texts me from Uganda and she says, we have power back now. We have water too. I'm really happy. Walk to work with chickens and goats. And I was just struck by how we were on completely different planets at that moment. And something struck me when she returned and she showed me videos and pictures of what she saw over there. I saw the face of poverty. I saw what it looked like. I also saw joy in her, which I hadn't seen before, which I didn't have. I saw joy in those kids who didn't have anything that I didn't have. And it just grabbed me. There was sadness, obviously. She was sad about what she saw and obliterated by it, but she was also happy. So in 2007, I decided I was gonna go to Uganda and figure out what she saw there. I needed to know what she had gotten in Uganda. And so on the bottom right there, you can see the picture of one of our first trips to Uganda. My wife and I went, and I spent some time, surprisingly enough, doing computer work for a nonprofit over there because they didn't have anyone to help them with their donated computers that were keeping track of kids' medical donations and school donations that people would pay for. And I spent 2 weeks doing computer work in Uganda, East Africa, which is certainly not what I expected to be doing over there. But it connected me with something where my skills were making a difference, literally saving people's lives. And I didn't see that coming. So in 2008, we decided, hey, let's take our kids on a trip. I think it's important that our kids see what Uganda's like and see the pictures there in 2008. We took our kids to Uganda. And I saw a change in them. They opened up. They didn't play video games for 2 weeks, which was stunning. They played with sticks and rocks and chickens and stuff. Although it was hard, it's a developing country. My kids just loved it. And by 2009, we decided as a family to move to Uganda full time. And basically, that was the end of my career, if you will. That was when I got out of INFOSEC, basically. I walked away from my job. We didn't have much income to speak of. But an interesting thing happened because the hacker community surrounded us during that time and was funding these trips that we were taking to Uganda. Even though, they knew the first trip was a missions trip with a church when I went with my wife because we were going with our church. But that didn't seem to matter to this community. In fact, our first trip was primarily funded by an atheist, an agnostic, a Wiccan, and a Jew. And for a white bread Christian boy, that was, a little bit surprising, but it shouldn't have been surprising because as I would find out, this was what the hacker community was really all about. So when I got back from Uganda that first time and I felt that joy of helping people, I founded an organization called Hackers for Charity, and the idea was simple. The idea was, let's take the technology ability that's in the hacker community and try to use it to help people. Let's find ways that we can help charities or help people in need with the skills that we have. And so this is sort of a whirlwind of what happened since 2009. Now, being a technology guy, one of the first things I wanted to do when I got on the ground is I was like, we need to put computers in schools because they just weren't there. And so the hacker community got together and donated equipment. We lugged it over to Uganda, which was really difficult. As you can imagine, we're talking suitcases on an airplane to bring computer equipment over. It's about 36 hours door to door to get the equipment from here to there, and it's tough. But we took computers over, and the response with these kids was just stunning. I mean, you can see the way that they're standing up on chairs to get a look at a computer. And that kind of thing just doesn't happen here, and I was shocked by that. The fact is, none of the kids in this room had ever touched a computer. And so this was a big deal to them. So we started looking around for other places to put computer labs. This is I know to you it probably looks like a shed, or maybe an outhouse or something like that. That is not an outhouse. This is an outhouse in Uganda, and that is scary. I can tell you firsthand. This is not a place you want to be. This is like something out of a zombie movie or something inside there. It's bad. But anyway, this is not a shed. This is an extra building at a school in Uganda, and we basically turned this building about the size of a decent bathroom into a computer lab. Again, using donated equipment from the hacker community. Now, I wish I could tell you that this had a happy ending, but it didn't. It turns out that because of the technology gap, the teachers and the administrators and even the students didn't have the faintest idea how to care for this equipment. Most of them had never touched a computer. The teachers had zero experience using a computer, so they weren't qualified to teach them. Half of the people that touched the mouse grabbed it with the opposite hand. So if the mouse is on the right side, they're grabbing it with the left hand. I mean, little things like that made me realize, wait, they weren't ready for this. This great idea that I had of putting computers into schools was not a great idea. And I needed to take some time to listen to what the needs were. And unfortunately, this was a bit heartbreaking because the computers were degrading and they weren't serving their purpose, so we had to pull them out of some of these classrooms. And what we did is we started a training center. And this is a picture of the outside of our training center. This kid randomly walked by with a hacker shirt on, which I thought was hilarious. Thought that was great. But basically, we consolidated the equipment into a training center. And the idea here was, let's use this equipment, but let's watch over it ourselves, and let's bring people into this center and give them the basic skills that they need, starting with teachers, so the teachers can go out and teach the kids. And this was absolutely a success. In fact, this year alone, we have 200 of our students have landed jobs, and we trained over 1,600 students. This smaller statistic of people getting jobs was unexpected. My goal was just to provide education. But what a lot of our students that came into our center that took classes for free did is they took those skills to get jobs. And in true African fashion, one person getting a job helps a dozen people in an extended family. So this was a significant number for us. But besides our students, we created impactful careers for our staff as well. This is Josh Karunda. He's one of our leading instructors. And one of his goals with the training center was to get out of the training center. He realized that not everybody could get into the center. So what he wanted to do is he wanted to get people that were out in the villages, that were outside the towns, and bring the training to them to try to help them. And that really inspired me, so I started looking for ways that we could expand out and reach people that couldn't get into the town. And I'm going to show you a video. This is a video that I found when I was sort of doing some research when I was in Uganda. Let's see if I can get the audio to work.
Not long ago, I planted a crop of potatoes. Then suddenly they started dying one after the other. Checked out the books and they didn't tell me much. So I went and I did the search. Potato diseases. One of the websites told me that ants could be the problem. It said sprinkle wood ash over the plants. Then after a few days, the ants disappeared. I got excited about the internet. I have this friend who really would like to expand his business. So we went with him to the cyber cafe and we checked out several sites. When I met him next, he was going to put a windmill at a local school. I felt proud because something that wasn't there before was suddenly there. I realized that not everybody can be able to access what I was able to access. I thought that I need to have an internet that my grandmother can use. And so I thought about a notice board, a simple wooden notice board. When I get information on my phone, I'm able to post the information on the notice board. So it's basically like a computer. I use the internet to help people. I think I'm searching for a better life for me and my neighbors. So many people have access to information, but there's no follow-up to that. I think a follow-up to that is our knowledge. When people have the knowledge, they can find solutions without having to be helped out. Information is powerful, but it is how we use it that will define us.
I'd like to thank our sponsor, Google, for that one. They didn't sponsor this year, did they? We have to reach out to them, maybe. That quote really grabbed me. Information is powerful, but it's how we use it that will define us. And when I saw this video, Google went out and filmed this thing. They went with a massive film crew to a place called Soy, Kenya, and filmed this thing. And I found this video 3 years after Google filmed it. And I started doing some research and I thought, man, this guy must be huge by now. He had Google behind him. He had this great idea. It was very inspirational, using computers and the internet to help people, farmers and, rural people like that. And what I found out was that sadly, he hadn't done much of anything. The video sort of went viral and Google promoted it, but really nothing had happened with it. So I sort of thought, well, what sort of technology can we put together that will bring resources to areas that don't have internet, since this stuff is so powerful? So we worked with a group called World Possible, and we teamed up with them, and they had offline content, Wikipedia, Khan Academy, Project Gutenberg, and they were taking all these internet resources and making them available offline. And so we came up with a bunch of devices that would take this repository and get it out there. So for example, you see the Chromebook there. This is a Chromebook that works offline with an SD card that has all that information on it. The little white device there is basically a device from Intel that we worked to produce that takes content, up to 1 terabyte of content, and makes it wirelessly available. So it's a Wi-Fi device that's ruggedized. And so people on their phones can actually get to the content. And so I said, well, I'm going to take all this stuff and I'm going to travel to Soy, Kenya to find Zach, and I'm going to give him all of this stuff. And you can see, I mean, it was a real eyesore. This place is a terrible place. You don't want to go there. It's awful. I know, right? It's some of the most beautiful country I've ever seen. I get there and I'm all excited to give this equipment to Zach. It's been donated by the community. We put all this effort into it. And so I dumped all this stuff on him. I'm super excited. I got my I Hack Charity shirt on and everything, Superman style. I'm here to save you, Zach. And I give him the equipment, and this is kind of the look that I get from him. He's just overwhelmed. He's like, what is all this? I'm a farmer. And I realized that I had done it again. I hadn't listened necessarily to his needs. I had just sort of jumped into a technology project. And so I sort of had to reboot and get back to Zach's level and think, okay, well, what can we do to help Zach? And so we started training him. We gave him some pared down equipment. We just focused on the Chromebook. And he just ran with this thing. He just started going all over Kenya, sharing his knowledge with people and showing them how they can get the same information by leaving these little Rachel devices all over and showing them how to use it. Just put this all over Kenya. And it was typical for Zach to be in the middle of, in this case, a maize field, just showing farmers information about how to grow their crops better using a Chromebook in the middle of nowhere without internet. And so this idea of extending technology to get it to more people, we sort of ran with this. The next thing we did was start working with satellite technology. This was a project called OuterNet, which used repurposed satellite dishes, TV satellite dishes, to receive broadcasts that would be the same content that we had on our Rachel boxes and more. It just quickly became obvious to us, I guess, that really there was a need for more technology, for more advanced technology, the more that we started doing this. And so our students in the training center who were learning Word and Excel and all this stuff started coming to us and asking us questions like, I want to learn Python. I'm like, Python? Well, what do you want to do with Python? I don't know. I just want to learn Python. Okay, so we put together a Python course, and somebody would come and say, I want to learn about electronics. And we started seeing this curiosity build to the point where we had a subset of people who were very interested in advanced technology. Okay? And so I thought, well, let me put it out to the hacker community and see what people think. And soon enough, we started getting responses. One person in the community donated a 3D printer. Here's a demonstration of the 3D printer in Uganda. And again, you can just, it's a different level of excitement over there because this is like alien technology. Here you can basically walk into any big box store and see a 3D printer. But over there, it was just something that was completely foreign. So we saw that kids would get excited about advanced technology. Now, you could definitely argue, well, this doesn't make much sense in a place like Uganda where, people are growing hungry. It's not sustainable solution and all this stuff. But it was the excitement that the kids sort of picked up that kept us going. This idea that they were seeing something that they had never seen before and getting excited about it. The next step was the kids, when we started teaching them about these technologies, was getting interested in robotics. Here's the kids put together, this is a Mindstorms robot that they put together. And again, you can see the excitement this is a group of former street girls when they built their first robot and set it loose. And so again, this was not necessarily the most practical skill to take to Uganda. You think, robotics and all that stuff, but again, that excitement made a huge difference. Suddenly kids are asking, about complex subjects, science and technology and math and programming, and they want to learn it because they want to understand the inner workings of how this thing works. And to me, that resonated with basically the hacker spirit, the hacker mentality of wanting to get deeper into technology. And regardless of the fact that, all the nonprofit groups are going, well, you should be doing mosquito nets instead, I really felt like we should stay true to our roots and just sort of keep that thirst for knowledge going. This is our first robotics team. This is a team called J Robotics. And they've graduated on to using VEX, which is the higher standard for robotics training in schools, even up to the college level. This team is headed to the VEX Robotics World Championship. They're going to be the first team from Uganda. And this has all come out of developing a space in Uganda, a hacker space, where we could have these advanced technologies available. So that's sort of what we did. since 2009 when we moved to Uganda. Now, it was a great time that we had in Uganda, but it got to the point for our kids where it was time for them to go to college and it was time for our oldest ones to get into high school. And quite frankly, it was very difficult living in Uganda. We were under constant threat of theft, primarily, tropical diseases. You know, the infrastructure there is terrible. You don't have access to good hospitals. It was a hard life for our family. It was filled with a lot of joy, but it was also very difficult. And we started to get to the point where we were burned out, because frankly, all this work was happening through us, because not a lot of people wanted to come to Uganda. Surprise there. But we decided it was time to come back. And so when I started thinking about, you know, what is it going to be like leaving all of this work, I started realizing that there's a lot of opportunity here in the U.S. as well. You don't have to go to Uganda to find poverty. You don't have to go to Uganda to find kids that are excited about technology but don't have a way to learn about it. And so what I wanted to do is I really wanted to focus my efforts on our local communities. I wanted to find ways that hackers could help, not just in Uganda by supporting the work that we're doing there, but right here in our own communities. And of course, I needed to find a job as well, and that was going to be pretty difficult after 7 years out of the industry. But things lined up perfectly. Right now I'm working for Offensive Security. They've been friends of ours for a long time, big supporters of HFC. And what I'm doing specifically is I'm working on building the Cali community. My job full-time has become learning about communities, learning about the hacker community, figuring out what they're interested in, what drives them, what makes them tick. So in a sense, my job at Offensive Security and my job at HFC have come together sort of into one idea. And it's this idea of working with the community, working with the hacker community. We're working with the Northwest Arkansas Fab Lab is a startup, just got online. They don't have a lot of equipment. So we took our 3D printer and our CNC machine and robots and stuff that were donated by the community, and we're kickstarting the Fab Lab over in Northwest Arkansas. We've gotten groups of hackers together by request and gone to women's shelters to talk about privacy issues. You know, what is it? How can we keep our data safe? How can we be anonymous if we need to use social media? You know, in women's shelters, a lot of times they need anonymity, you know, because they have people that might be looking to do them harm, that kinds of things. So imagine a bunch of hackers going into, you know, a women's shelter and giving a talk, you know, about protecting your privacy and all that. So we've done several things like that sort of came out of the community. But there's also been a lot of ways that doing things doesn't involve technology. For example, there was a fire that was basically in our backyard when we were in Uganda that burnt down a village. 220 people were basically homeless. And I posted a video of the fire on Facebook, and the hacker community responded and started sending money. And so we set up shelters for them, we started feeding them, and the money kept coming in. And we had enough money to rebuild that village, and then the money kept coming in. And I realized that we rebuilt the village, gave these people their homes back, but a lot of them didn't have job skills. And a lot of them, you know, didn't have the interest to get into technology. So I did some Google searches and found out about leatherworking, you know, because there was a leather tannery that was near this village. And so I got on Google and looked up, how do you do leather work? And we used the leftover money to buy leatherworking tools. So this is a little training that we did, providing leatherworking training in Uganda. And one of the guys, this is Johnson, just became a master leather craftsman through this training. You can see he's wearing a BSides shirt there he's representing, which is very cool. But again, this had nothing to do with modern technology. It was just a need. You know, we saw a need in some people, and as a community got together to help them. And you know, now we have an Etsy shop where we're selling leather stuff. So all of this sort of comes together, and the question that I'm often asked is, what's next now that you're back in the US? Well, one of the things that I'd like to do is I would like to see the training center still run. I'd like to see our training center and our hackerspace run. It costs about $12,000 a year to run that, but so far we've been able to do it for the past 7 years. I'd also like to get you engaged in the community. I'd like to hear your ideas. That's my primary goal of moving back to the US, really, with HFC, is to figure out ways that you might be interested in getting involved in the community. Some final thoughts as this sort of all comes together. I'm going to do the cardinal sin here and read the slides. No offense, I know you guys can read, but first of all, continue to work on solving impossible problems. I mean, really, that's what we do best, even outside of our industry. I think one of our strengths is that we work together in uncommon ways. I would love to see us leverage that. Reach for your dreams, but don't forget those that can't. You know, there's nothing wrong with getting ahead in life. Just don't lose sight of the fact that there are people around you that are struggling. You attended this conference. You're out, you're meeting people. But for every one of you, there's at least 1,000 that haven't come to a conference that, sort of like me, were sitting in, our rooms trying to do, this stuff and trying to learn about it with potential. I am a product of the hacker community. The Google hacking database was stuff that was submitted by the hacker community. That turned into the Google hacking phenomenon. That turned into the books. That gave me my career. Everything I learned came from this community, whether it was asking people on bulletin boards back in the days or getting on forums. Everybody in this community contributed to what I was able to do, and that's basically true of everyone. But not everyone is getting out to these things to be met, in person. Rise above the trolls and the criminals. Defy expectations and shatter stereotypes. The word hacker has gotten a negative image because of the media. 99.9% of us in the community have jobs, and families and careers. We're not out there breaking the law. We're breaking into systems or defending systems for our clients. But there aren't a lot of stories out there about hackers doing good. I'd like to change that. And I think small environment communities like this is a great place to start, to really make a difference and change the face of our community. And last but not least, find outlets to keep this amazing job a fun hobby, not just drudgery. I've fallen victim to that, where I got to a point where I lost my hobby, which was being involved in technology, and it became a job and it started to become drudgery. I'd encourage you not to let that happen. Find outlets and fun things to do with tech that are aside from your job that will keep it fun, that'll keep it interesting, because obviously it's a dream to love your work. Just I'd encourage you to share it with others. So to wrap it up, whether you donate or get out and do something or simply help others inside or outside the hacker community, you're a part of it. So welcome to BSides and welcome to the hacker community. Glad you guys are here. Thank you. All right, this is our website and some other places that you can find out about the work that we're doing. My email address is there as well if you guys have any questions. We have some time, so if you guys would like to ask some questions, I'll take questions. If not, I'll be around the conference all day. But anybody have any questions? Comments, heckling, it's all welcome. All right, yes, on there. Yeah, so the question is English the primary language? And it is, and that's one of the reasons that we went to Uganda, is because there wasn't much of a language barrier, and there was comparably a lot of infrastructure considering. I did have internet access, although it was slow. We did have power, most of the time. We did have water that we didn't drink out of the tap, but that's a lot more infrastructure than you find in some places. But yeah, English was definitely the first language. Yes? What's that? Yeah, so the question is, has this experience changed what our kids are doing and sort of what their path is? The experience has definitely changed them for the better in a lot of ways. I mean, what they had exposure to is something that kids see for sound bites on TV. It's not something that most kids in the US experience on a daily basis. Even the level of poverty here in the US is very different than what you see in Uganda. But at the same time, they saw incredible things. They did incredible things. You know, seeing, you know, elephants and giraffe and zebra, and, you know, taking kayaking trips as part of, you know, a school curriculum. You know, all this stuff that, you know, kids generally don't have access to, they did, and it really opened their eyes. Interestingly, most of my kids aren't crazy about technology like I am. They don't look at it and go, I want to learn absolutely everything there is. To my kids, technology is a tool, you know, and it will become a part of their careers for sure, but I don't foresee that any of them will be like me, in the sense that they have to rip apart everything and figure out how it works. And I think part of that is simply because of the generation. You know, having access to technology everywhere gives you the ability to use it as a tool and use it in creative and interesting ways. It's not technology for technology's sake. But yeah, it was a great experience for them. But at the same time, we're all very glad to be back. It was 7 years was a long time. And frankly, to be perfectly honest, you know, we all came back in shock. You know, definite PTSD type stuff, because we were constantly living in an environment that was difficult, in a harsh environment, and that became normal, and that's not normal here. And so we're still trying to figure it all out, but it's great to be back. Thank you. That was a good question. Yes. Yeah, the question is, do we plan on doing anything in other countries? So here's what I see for HFC is I don't want to be the person that stands up here and says, this is our big project that we're going to do. I want you guys to help me with it, or give me money, or whatever. What my vision is for HFC is to have the community come up with interesting ideas, and then we sort of help you along in the path. So whether it's, you know, you want to set up a nonprofit, or you're like, well, I think I'd like to help at, you know, a local school with some young kids, but I don't know the first thing about teaching or what to teach them. And we say, well, from our experience, here's the 3 things that work the best. If you're in 1st grade, it's this robotics kit. If you're in 3rd grade, it's this kit. We give you, you know, access to the kits and the curriculum so that you don't have to do the effort to figure out what to do. We help you in that, you know, or, you know, we use our platform, our Twitter feed, or our Facebook page to promote what you're doing, or to draw attention to the work that you're doing. I don't want HFC to be driving the projects. I want HFC to be assisting you in doing something that you are excited about or interested in. So whether that's here in the US or it's in any other country, I think it's just wide open. That's a good question. Anyone else? Okay. Great. Well, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your time. I look forward to hanging out with you guys, and definitely enjoy the conference, and drop me a line if you have any more questions. Thanks so much.